The train whistle echoed across the empty plains as Catherine stepped down onto the wooden platform. Her worn leather bag felt heavy in her hands, and dust swirled around her long blue dress. The wind tugged at her brown hair, pulling strands, loose from the neat bun she had carefully pinned that morning in the last town. She looked around the small station. There were only a few buildings scattered along the dirt road, and mountains rose up in the distance like giant sleeping bears. This was Willowbrook, Montana Territory. This was going to be her new home. Catherine pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from her coat pocket. The letter was worn from being read so many times. It was from Daniel Parker, a rancher who needed a wife to help care for his young daughter and manage his household. Catherine had answered his advertisement in the Boston newspaper 3 months ago. Now here she was, 1,000 miles from everything she had ever known. A tall man with a weathered face approached her. His hat was pulled low over his eyes, and his boots made soft sounds on the wooden platform. He looked like he spent most of his time outdoors. His hands were rough and calloused, the kind that came from years of hard work. "Miss Catherine Wells?" His voice was quiet, almost shy. "Yes, that would be me." Catherine tried to smile, but her stomach was full of butterflies. This man would be her husband in just a few days. They had exchanged letters, but seeing him in person felt strange and new. "I'm Daniel Parker. Welcome to Willowbrook." He tipped his hat politely. "Let me help you with your things." As Daniel loaded her trunk and bags into his wagon, Catherine noticed a small figure hiding behind one of the wooden posts that held up the station roof. It was a little girl with red hair that caught the sunlight like copper pennies. The child's clothes were clean but plain, and she clutched a worn rag doll against her chest. "Is that your daughter?" Catherine asked softly. Daniel glanced over, and his expression grew sad. "Yes, that's Lucy. She's 8 years old. Lucy, come meet Miss Catherine." The little girl stepped out from behind the post but stayed far away. Her green eyes were serious and watchful, like an old person trapped in a child's body. She didn't smile or wave. She just stared at Catherine with a look that seemed to see right through her. "Hello, Lucy. I'm very happy to meet you." Catherine knelt down to be at the child's eye level, but Lucy took a step backward. "She doesn't talk much anymore," Daniel explained quietly. "Not since her mother passed 2 years ago." Catherine felt her heart squeeze tight. This poor little girl had lost her mother, and now a stranger was coming to take her place. No wonder she looked so weary and afraid. The wagon ride to the ranch took almost an hour. The road was bumpy and full of ruts from wagon wheels and horse hooves. Catherine bounced on the hard wooden seat and tried to make conversation with Daniel, but he seemed as shy as his daughter. Lucy sat between them, still holding her doll, still watching Catherine with those careful green eyes. The countryside was beautiful in a wild, lonely way. Tall grass stretched out like a green ocean, moving in waves when the wind blew across it. Wildflowers dotted the landscape with splashes of yellow and purple. In the distance, cattle grazed peacefully, looking like small brown dots against the huge sky. "It's very different from Boston," Catherine said, trying to fill the silence. "I imagine it is," Daniel replied. "Is it too different, too empty for you?" Catherine thought about the crowded streets of Boston, the smoke from factories, the noise of carriages and people always rushing somewhere. Here, the only sounds were the wind, the creak of the wagon wheels, and birds singing in the distance. "No," she said honestly. "It's peaceful. I think I could learn to love it here." Lucy turned to look at her when she said this, but quickly looked away again. The Parker Ranch appeared ahead of them as they came over a small hill. It was a simple wooden house with a front porch and 2 rocking chairs. There was a red barn nearby, and corrals where horses stood switching their tails at flies. Chickens scratched in the dirt yard, and a vegetable garden grew beside the house. It looked like a place where a family could be happy. But Catherine could feel the sadness hanging over it like a gray cloud. This had been a home full of love once, but now it felt empty and quiet. Daniel helped Catherine down from the wagon and carried her bags to the house. The front door opened into a main room with a stone fireplace and simple wooden furniture. Everything was clean but bare. There were no flowers in vases, no bright curtains on the windows, no signs that a woman had made this place feel like home. "Your room is upstairs," Daniel said, leading her up narrow wooden steps. "Lucy's room is next to yours, and mine is down the hall." Catherine's room was small but comfortable. There was a bed with a plain white quilt, a dresser with a mirror, and a window that looked out over the prairie. Someone had left a pitcher of water and a clean towel on the dresser. "Thank you," Catherine said. "It's perfect." Daniel stood awkwardly. "In the doorway. Dinner will be ready in about an hour. Nothing fancy, just beef stew and biscuits." After he left, Catherine sat on the edge of the bed and looked around her new room. 3 days ago she had been living in a tiny apartment above a dress shop in Boston, working long hours for very little money. Now she was in Montana, about to marry a man she barely knew, about to become a mother to a child who seemed to want. Nothing to do with her. Had she made a terrible mistake? Through her window she could see Lucy sitting on the front porch steps, still holding her doll. The little girl was looking out at the prairie with such a sad expression that it made Catherine's heart ache. She looked like she was waiting for someone who would never come back. Catherine unpacked her few belongings and changed into a fresh dress. When she came downstairs, she found Daniel in the kitchen stirring a pot of stew. The smell was rich and hearty, making her stomach rumble with hunger. "Can I help with anything?" she offered. "You can set the table if you'd like." "Plates are in that cupboard there." As Catherine set out 3 plates and cups, she watched Daniel work. He moved around the kitchen like he had been cooking for himself and Lucy for a long time. His movements were efficient but tired, like someone who did what needed to be done but took no joy in it. Lucy came in when they called her for dinner. She sat at the table and ate quietly, never looking up from her plate. Daniel tried to make conversation about the ranch, the weather, the cattle, but his words felt forced and uncomfortable. Catherine realized that this wasn't going to be easy for any of them. They were 3 lonely people trying to figure out how to become a family. Daniel missed his wife. Lucy missed her mother. And Catherine was far from home, trying to find a place where she belonged. But as she looked around the quiet kitchen, watching this father and daughter who had forgotten how to be happy, Catherine felt something stir in her heart. Maybe they could help each other heal. Maybe, with time and patience, they could learn to be a real family. The evening sun was setting outside the window, painting the sky pink and gold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight they were all together under the same roof. It was a beginning. Catherine woke up before sunrise on her first morning at the Parker Ranch. Through her window she could see the sky slowly changing from black to deep purple, then to soft pink. The prairie stretched out endlessly in all directions, and she had never seen so much open space in her entire life. Downstairs, she found Daniel already dressed and drinking coffee in the kitchen. He looked surprised to see her up so early. "Good morning," Catherine said softly, not wanting to wake Lucy. "I'm used to getting up early. In Boston, I had to start work before the sun came up." "Morning," Daniel replied, offering her a cup of coffee. "I usually check on the cattle before breakfast." "You don't need to get up this early every day." But Catherine wanted to help. She wanted to show Daniel and Lucy that she was here to be part of their family, not just a stranger living in their house. "What can I do to help around here?" Daniel seemed uncomfortable with the question, like he wasn't used to having someone offer to share the work. "I usually make breakfast for Lucy before she goes to school." "Just simple things like oatmeal or eggs?" "I'd like to cook breakfast," Catherine said. "I enjoy cooking, and I'm pretty good at it." Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "All right." Lucy usually wakes up around 7. She likes her eggs scrambled, not fried. After Daniel left to tend to the animals, Catherine explored the kitchen more carefully. The shelves were stocked with basic supplies: flour, sugar, salt, dried beans, and canned goods. But there were no special touches, no herbs or spices that would make meals more interesting. It was the kitchen of someone who cooked to survive, not someone who cooked with love. She found eggs in the pantry and fresh milk in the cold cellar. There was butter wrapped in cloth and some bacon hanging in the smokehouse behind the kitchen. Catherine decided to make something special for Lucy's first breakfast with her new stepmother to be when Lucy came downstairs, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She stopped in the doorway and stared. Catherine had made fluffy pancakes with butter and honey, scrambled eggs with cheese and crispy bacon. The kitchen smelled wonderful, and the table was set with the good plates she had found in the china cabinet. "Good morning, Lucy," Catherine said cheerfully. "I hope you're hungry." Lucy sat down slowly, her green eyes wide with surprise. She had probably been eating plain oatmeal or cold biscuits for breakfast every morning since her mother died. She picked up her fork carefully, like she was afraid the food might disappear if she moved too quickly. "Do you like pancakes?" Catherine asked, sitting down across from her. Lucy nodded but didn't speak. She ate quietly, taking small bites and glancing up at Catherine every few moments. When Daniel came back from the barn, he stopped in the doorway just like Lucy had. "This looks really nice," he said, sounding almost guilty. "You didn't need to go to all this trouble." "It wasn't any trouble," Catherine replied. "I like cooking for people." They ate in silence, but it wasn't the uncomfortable silence of the night before. It was quieter, more thoughtful. Catherine could see that both Daniel and Lucy were thinking about something. Maybe remembering other breakfasts in this kitchen when things were different after breakfast. Daniel hitched up the wagon to take Lucy to the small schoolhouse in town. Catherine watched from the porch as they drove away, Lucy sitting beside her father, but looking back at the house where Catherine stood waving, alone in the house for the first time. Catherine began to really see how empty it felt. The rooms were clean and organized, but they had no personality, no warmth. The walls were bare except for one faded photograph of Daniel and a woman who must have been his first wife, Lucy's mother. She was pretty, with dark hair and a gentle smile. As she was holding baby Lucy in her arms, Catherine touched the photograph gently. This woman had made this house a home. She had filled these rooms with laughter and love. Now Catherine was supposed to somehow take her place, but how could she compete with a memory? In the main room, Catherine found a basket of mending that had been sitting in the corner for what looked like months. Daniel's shirts had tears from ranch work, and Lucy's dresses were too short and needed to be let down. Catherine settled into the rocking chair by the window and began to sew. Enjoying the peaceful rhythm of the work. As she worked, she noticed a small dollhouse in the corner of the room. It was beautifully made, probably by Daniel's own hands. The tiny furniture was carved with care, and there were even little curtains in the windows. But dust covered everything, and it was clear that no one had played with it in a long time. Catherine got up and gently picked up the dollhouse. Inside, she found a family of wooden dolls, a mother, father, and little girl. The mother doll was missing, probably lost or hidden away because it was too painful for Lucy to see, upstairs in Lucy's room. Catherine saw more signs of a little girl who had stopped playing. Toys sat untouched on shelves and books lay in neat piles, clearly arranged by an adult, not scattered around by a child who loved to read. Lucy's clothes were hung up carefully, but there were no drawings on the walls, no collections of pretty rocks or flowers, none of the things that usually filled a happy child's room. Catherine spent the morning cleaning and organizing, but she was careful not to change things too much. This was still Daniel and Lucy's home, and she was still a guest here. She washed the dishes, swept the floors, and dusted the furniture. She picked wildflowers from the prairie and put them in a glass jar on the kitchen table, adding just a small touch of color to the room. When Daniel and Lucy returned for lunch, Catherine had soup warming on the stove and fresh bread cooling on the counter. The smell of baking bread filled the house, making it feel more like a home and less like a place where people just slept and ate. "Smells good in here," Daniel said, but he sounded worried rather than pleased. "You don't need to work so hard." "Catherine, I hired a woman from town to come help with the heavy cleaning once a week." "I don't mind," Catherine said. "I like keeping busy." What she didn't say was that keeping busy helped her not think about how far she was from everything familiar, how strange it felt to be in someone else's house, trying to fit into someone Elsa's life? Lucy ate her soup quietly, but Catherine noticed that she kept looking around the kitchen, taking in the small changes. The flowers on the table, the way the bread knife was placed just so, the fact that there were cloth napkins instead of just wiping hands on dish towels after lunch. Daniel went back outside to work, and Lucy sat at the kitchen table to do her schoolwork. Catherine worked nearby, mending clothes and occasionally glancing over to see if Lucy needed help. The little girl was clearly smart, working through her arithmetic problems and reading assignments without any trouble. "Do you like school?" Catherine asked softly. Lucy looked up, seemed to consider whether to answer, then nodded once. "What's your favorite subject?" This time Lucy hesitated longer. Finally, in a voice so quiet Catherine had to strain to hear it, she whispered, "Reading." It was the first word Lucy had spoken to her directly. "I love reading too," Catherine said, trying not to show how excited she was to hear Lucy's voice. "What kind of stories do you like?" But Lucy had already gone back to her work, the moment of connection closing as quickly as it had opened. That evening, as Catherine prepared dinner, she could feel Lucy watching her from the doorway. The little girl seemed fascinated by the way Catherine moved around the kitchen, how she seasoned the food, how she set the table with care during dinner. Daniel tried to make conversation about his day, but Catherine could tell he wasn't used to talking much during meals. They were all still figuring out how to be around each other, how to fill the silence without making it feel forced. As the sun set outside the kitchen window, Catherine realized that this was her life now. These quiet meals, this big empty house, this sad little girl who had forgotten how to be a child. It wasn't what she had imagined when she answered Daniel's advertisement, but maybe it was exactly what she was meant to do. Maybe she wasn't here just to be a wife and housekeeper. Maybe she was here to help this broken family remember how to live again, how to find joy in simple things like pancakes for breakfast and wildflowers on the table. That night, as Catherine lay in her narrow bed listening to the wind blow across the prairie, she made herself a promise. She would be patient. She would be kind. And somehow she would help Lucy find her voice again. A week had passed since Catherine's arrival at the ranch, and she was beginning to understand the rhythm of life in this quiet house. Daniel worked from sunrise to sunset, coming in only for meals and falling asleep in his chair by the fire most evenings. Lucy went to school, did her homework, and moved through her days like a little ghost, present but not really there. Catherine had tried everything she could think of to connect with the child. She made special treats, told stories about her life in Boston, and even offered to help Lucy with her schoolwork. But Lucy remained polite and distant, accepting Catherine's kindness but never really responding to it. The weather had been unusually warm for late September, and that particular morning felt heavy and still. No breeze stirred the tall grass, and the sky looked like it might rain later. Catherine finished hanging laundry on the line behind the house, and decided to check on the chickens in the coop. As she scattered corn for the hens, she heard a soft sound coming from the barn. It was barely audible, but something about it made her stop and listen more carefully. There it was again, a small, muffled crying sound. Catherine followed the sound around to the side of the barn, where an old wooden ladder led up to the hayloft. The crying was coming from up there, and Catherine's heart clenched as she realized it must be Lucy. She climbed the ladder carefully, not wanting to startle the child. The hayloft was dim and dusty, filled with bales of hay and farm equipment. In the far corner, curled up in a pile of loose straw, was Lucy. Her small shoulders shook with quiet sobs, and she was holding something in her hands. "Lucy?" Catherine called softly. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" Lucy looked up with tear-streaked cheeks and red, swollen eyes. In her hands was a tiny bird, one of the babies that had fallen from a nest in the rafters above. The bird was clearly dead, its neck twisted at an unnatural angle. "I found them this morning," Lucy whispered, her voice broken and raw. "The whole nest fell down. All the babies are dead. Their mama built the nest so carefully, and now they're all gone." Catherine's heart broke as she understood. This wasn't really about the birds. This was about everything Lucy had lost, everything that had been taken away from her too soon. "Oh, honey," Catherine whispered, moving slowly closer. She wanted to wrap Lucy in her arms, but she was afraid the child might pull away like she had every other time. Mama always saved the baby birds, Lucy continued, tears streaming down her face. When I was little, if we found hurt birds or baby animals, Mama would take care of them. She had gentle hands. She could fix anything that was broken. Lucy looked down at the dead bird in her palms. But I can't fix them. I can't fix anything. I couldn't fix Mama when she was sick, and I can't bring these babies back to life. Catherine felt tears stinging her own eyes. This poor little girl had been carrying so much pain, trying to be strong and grown up when she should have been allowed to be a child. Lucy, Catherine said gently, can I sit with you? Lucy nodded, and Catherine settled beside her in the straw. She could see now that there were 4 tiny birds scattered around the hay. Lucy had gathered them all together, trying to put them back in their broken nest. When my mama died, I thought it was my fault too, Catherine said quietly. I was about your age. I kept thinking that if I had been a better daughter, if I had prayed harder, if I had helped more around the house, maybe God wouldn't have taken her away. Lucy looked at Catherine with surprise. Your mama died when you were little? Yes, and for a long time I felt angry and sad and so very alone. I felt like there was a big, empty hole inside my chest where my heart used to be. That's exactly how it feels, Lucy whispered. Like everything inside me is broken? I know, Catherine said, and I want you to know that it's okay to cry. It's okay to be sad and angry and scared. You don't have to be brave all the time. Lucy's face crumpled and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I miss her so much. I miss the way she smelled like lavender soap. I miss how she would braid my hair every morning and tell me stories at bedtime. I miss the way she would hum while she cooked dinner. Tell me more about her, Catherine encouraged. What was your favorite thing to do together? We used to pick wildflowers every Sunday after church, Lucy said, her voice getting stronger as she remembered. Mama knew the names of all the flowers. She taught me which ones you could eat and which ones were good for medicine. We would make bouquets for the kitchen table and press flowers in her big book. That sounds wonderful. I bet the house always smelled like flowers. It did, and Mama would sing while we arranged them. She had the prettiest voice. Lucy's tears were still flowing, but she was smiling a little now too. Papa doesn't sing anymore. He used to sing with Mama when he thought I wasn't listening. Catherine could picture it, Daniel and his first wife, working together in the kitchen, happy and in love, filling their home with music and laughter. No wonder this house felt so quiet and sad now. Lucy, Catherine said carefully, I want you to know something important. I'm not here to replace your mama. Nobody could ever do that. Your mama will always be your mama, and it's good that you love her and miss her. Lucy looked at Catherine with those serious green eyes. Then why are you here? It was such a direct, honest question, and Catherine realized that Lucy deserved an equally honest answer. I'm here because I was lonely too, Catherine said. In Boston, I lived all by myself in a tiny room. I worked all day making dresses for other people, but I didn't have a family of my own. When I saw your papa's advertisement in the newspaper, I thought maybe we could help each other. Maybe we could all be less lonely together. Lucy was quiet for a long moment, thinking this over. Then she looked at Catherine with an expression that was much older than her 8 years. You look lonely, Lucy said softly, and I'm done crying alone. The words hung in the air between them, and Catherine felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't just a sad little girl talking. This was a child who had been forced to grow up too fast, who understood loss and loneliness in ways that no 8-year-old should have to. Maybe we could cry together sometimes, Catherine suggested gently. And maybe we could find happy things together too. Lucy nodded, and for the first time since Catherine had arrived, the child moved closer instead of pulling away. She leaned against Catherine's shoulder, still holding the dead bird. What should we do with them? Lucy asked. The baby birds? We should bury them properly, Catherine said, and maybe plant some flowers on their grave. Your mama would have liked that, don't you think? Yes, Mama always said that even sad things could be beautiful if you handled them with love. They climbed down from the hayloft together, Lucy carrying the small birds carefully in her apron. Behind the house, near Catherine's flower garden, they dug a small hole and placed the birds inside. Wrapped in a piece of soft cloth, Lucy picked wildflowers to place on the tiny grave, the same purple asters and yellow sunflowers that she used to gather with her mother. As they worked together, she began to tell Catherine more stories about her mama. How she made the best apple pie in the county. How she always tucked Lucy in at night and checked for monsters under the bed. How she would dance around the kitchen when she was happy. "Papa doesn't know I remember him dancing with Mama," Lucy confided as they walked back to the house. "But I used to sneak down the stairs and watch them. They looked so happy together." "I bet they were very happy," Catherine said. "And I bet your mama would want your papa to be happy again someday. Do you think she would like you?" Lucy asked. Suddenly, Catherine considered this seriously. "I hope so. I think any mama would want someone kind to take care of her little girl. But even if she didn't like me at first, I think she would want us to try to be a family." That evening at dinner, something was different. Lucy sat a little closer to Catherine instead of as far away as possible. When Catherine asked about her day at school, Lucy actually answered with more than just nods or one-word responses. Daniel noticed the change immediately. "You seem more talkative tonight, Lucy," he said, looking puzzled but pleased. "Miss Catherine, and I buried some baby birds today," Lucy explained. "And we talked about Mama." Daniel's face went pale, and Catherine saw fear flash in his eyes. He had been protecting Lucy from painful memories, thinking that not talking about her mother would help her heal faster. "It's okay, Papa," Lucy said, reaching over to pat his hand. "It's good to talk about Mama. Miss Catherine says it's okay to be sad sometimes." Daniel looked at Catherine with an expression she couldn't quite read. Gratitude, maybe mixed with something that might have been relief. "Your mama would be proud of you, Lucy," he said quietly. "She always said you were the bravest little girl in the world." "I don't feel very brave," Lucy admitted. "But Miss Catherine says I don't have to be brave all the time." That night, as Catherine tucked Lucy into bed, a ritual the child had shyly requested, Lucy looked up at her with those wise green eyes. "Miss Catherine, do you think we could pick flowers together this Sunday, like I used to do with Mama?" "I would love that," Catherine said, smoothing Lucy's red hair back from her forehead. "We could start a new tradition, just for us, and maybe someday Papa could come with us. He used to know all the flower names, too, before he got so sad." "Maybe he could," Catherine agreed. "Good night, sweetheart." The next few weeks brought a gradual warmth to the Parker household, like ice slowly melting in spring sunshine. After their conversation in the barn, Lucy began to open up bit by bit, sharing small pieces of her thoughts and memories with Catherine. It started with simple things. Lucy would mention what she learned at school, or point out a pretty cloud formation, or ask Catherine about life in the big city. Catherine treasured each word, understanding that Lucy was slowly learning to trust again. One rainy Thursday afternoon, when Lucy couldn't go outside after school, Catherine found her sitting at the kitchen table looking bored and restless. The child had finished her homework and was staring out the window at the gray sky with a longing expression. "Would you like to learn how to make bread?" Catherine offered. "I could teach you my grandmother's recipe." Lucy's eyes lit up with interest. "Mama used to make bread, but she never taught me how. She said I was too little to work with the big mixing bowl." "Well, you're bigger now," Catherine said, pulling out the flour and other ingredients. "And I think you're exactly the right age to learn." They worked side by side at the wooden counter, Catherine showing Lucy how to measure the flour and add just the right amount of water and yeast. Lucy was a careful student, watching every step and asking thoughtful questions. "Why do we have to knead it so much?" Lucy asked as they took turns working the dough. "The kneading helps make the bread soft and fluffy," Catherine explained. "It's like giving the dough a massage to make it feel good." Lucy giggled at this explanation, and the sound was so sweet that Catherine felt her heart skip with joy. It was the first time she had heard Lucy laugh. As they waited for the dough to rise, they sat by the kitchen window and watched the rain. Lucy told Catherine about her best friend at school, a girl named Rose who had a pet rabbit and knew how to whistle really loud. Rose's mama packs her fancy lunches with store-bought cookies, Lucy said wistfully. I just get leftover biscuits. And sometimes an apple. Would you like me to pack your lunch from now on? Catherine offered. I could make you something special. Lucy nodded eagerly. Could you make those little meat pies like you made for dinner last week? Those were really good. Of course. I'll make you the best school lunch in the whole county. When Daniel came in for dinner that evening, the kitchen smelled like fresh bread and something that felt like happiness. Lucy proudly showed him the 2 perfect loaves they had baked together. We made them all by ourselves, Lucy announced. Well, mostly by ourselves. Miss Catherine helped a little bit. Daniel picked up one of the loaves and examined it carefully, then smiled one of the first real smiles Catherine had seen from him. This looks better than anything I could make. You're turning into quite the little baker, Lucy. Miss Catherine says cooking is like magic, Lucy said. You mix together ordinary things and they turn into something wonderful. Your mama used to say something like that too, Daniel said softly. She said the secret ingredient in all her cooking was love. Instead of making Lucy sad like mentions of her mother used to do, this memory made her smile. Miss Catherine uses the love ingredient too. I can taste it in everything she makes. Over the following days, Catherine and Lucy established a routine of cooking together after school. They made cookies shaped like animals, hearty stews that filled the house with delicious smells, and pies with lattice crusts that Lucy learned to weave like tiny baskets, but their bond grew strongest during their quiet conversations while they worked. Lucy began to share more memories of her mother, and Catherine listened carefully to every story. Mama had a special way of braiding my hair, Lucy said one afternoon as they rolled out pie crust. She would make it look like a crown, with little flowers woven in when we picked them. Could you show me how she did it? Catherine asked. I'd love to learn. That evening, Lucy sat on a cushion in front of Catherine's chair and guided her hands as she tried to recreate her mother's special braiding technique. It took several attempts, and Lucy's hair ended up looking a bit lopsided, but they both laughed at the result. Mama always said practice makes perfect, Lucy said, looking at herself in the small mirror. Maybe tomorrow we can try again? Every day if you want, Catherine promised Dot as the weeks passed. Catherine began to understand more about Daniel, too. She noticed how he watched Lucy when he thought no one was looking, his face full of love and worry. She saw how he hesitated before entering rooms where she and Lucy were talking, as if he was afraid to interrupt something precious. One evening, after Lucy had gone to bed, Catherine found Daniel sitting on the front porch, staring out at the stars. She brought him a cup of coffee and sat in the rocking chair beside him. Thank you, he said quietly, accepting the warm cup. For everything you're doing with Lucy, I can see how much happier she is. She's a wonderful child, Catherine replied. She just needed someone to listen to her. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. I haven't been very good at that, he admitted. After Anne died, I didn't know how to help Lucy with her sadness when I could barely handle my own. It was the first time he had said his first wife's name in Catherine's presence, and she understood what a big step that was for him. Grief is hard, Catherine said gently. There's no right way to do it. Lucy used to talk all the time, Daniel continued. She would chatter from morning to night, asking questions about everything. After Anne died, she just stopped. I thought maybe it was better to let her be quiet if that's what she needed. Children process things differently than adults do, Catherine said. Sometimes they need permission to feel their feelings out loud. I wouldn't know how to give her that permission. I'm not good with feelings and talking about things. Catherine looked at this strong, quiet man who worked so hard to provide for his daughter but struggled to connect with her emotionally. Maybe you don't need to use a lot of words, she suggested. Lucy knows you love her. Maybe you could show her in other ways. What do you mean? She told me that you and Anne used to sing together. She remembers dancing in the kitchen when you thought she wasn't watching. Daniel's face grew sad. I can't do those things anymore. It feels wrong without Anne, I understand. But maybe there are new things you could do with Lucy. She's growing up, and she needs her papa to be part of her life. She seems to be doing fine with you, Daniel said, and Catherine could hear a note of sadness in his voice. She needs both of us, Catherine said firmly. I can teach her to cook and braid her hair and listen to her stories. But you're her father? You're the one who can teach her about the ranch, about taking care of animals, about being strong and brave. Daniel considered this. She used to love helping me with the horses when she was younger. Why did she stop? After Anne died, I thought the barn was too dangerous for her. She seemed so fragile, so breakable. I was afraid something would happen to her too. But she's not fragile, Catherine said. She's one of the strongest people I've ever met. She's been carrying more sadness than most adults could handle, and she's still kind and smart and full of love. The next morning, Catherine watched from the kitchen window as Daniel approached Lucy, who was feeding the chickens before school. He said something to her that made her face light up with excitement, and she nodded eagerly when they came inside. For breakfast, Lucy was practically bouncing with excitement. Papa says I can help him train the new colt after school, she announced to Catherine. He says I'm big enough now to learn how to gentle a horse. That sounds wonderful, Catherine said, smiling at Daniel over Lucy's head. Your papa knows more about horses than anyone in the county. After Lucy left for school, Daniel lingered in the kitchen longer than usual. Thank you, he said to Catherine, for reminding me that she needs her father, not just someone to keep her safe. She loves you so much, Catherine said. She just wants to feel close to you again. That afternoon, Catherine watched from the kitchen window as Daniel and Lucy worked with the young horse in the corral. Lucy stood on a wooden crate so she could reach the colt's neck, brushing its coat with gentle strokes while Daniel held the lead rope. The little girl was completely focused on her task, and Daniel was patiently explaining something about how to read the horse's body language. For the first time since Catherine had arrived, she saw father and daughter truly connecting, sharing something that belonged just to them. It was beautiful to witness, but it also made Catherine wonder about her own place in this family. Was she helping them heal, or was she just a temporary bridge until they could find their way back to each other? And if they didn't need her anymore, where would that leave her? That evening at dinner, Lucy talked excitedly about her afternoon with the horses. She demonstrated the proper way to approach a young horse, using her rag doll as a model, and explained everything Daniel had taught her about reading animal behavior. Papa says the colt is going to be my special responsibility, Lucy said proudly. I get to help train him and give him a name and everything. What are you going to call him? Catherine asked. Lucy looked thoughtful. I was thinking maybe Hope, because Papa says he's going to grow up to be a really good horse even though he's just a baby now. Catherine felt a lump form in her throat. Hope. October arrived with a burst of golden colors that painted the prairie in shades of amber and rust. The cottonwood trees along the creek turned bright yellow, and the morning air carried the crisp promise of winter ahead. It had been 6 weeks since Catherine's arrival, and the Parker Ranch felt more like a real home every day. The biggest change was in Lucy, who had transformed from a silent, watchful child into a chattering, curious little girl. She bounded out of bed each morning, eager to help Catherine with breakfast, and she filled the house with stories about school, questions about everything she saw, and plans for all the things she wanted to do. Miss Catherine, can we make apple butter today? Lucy asked one Saturday morning as she set the table for breakfast. Mrs. Henderson at school said her mama makes the best apple butter in the county, but I told her ours would be even better. Catherine smiled as she flipped pancakes on the griddle. Lucy had become fiercely proud of their cooking adventures and bragged about Catherine's skills to anyone who would listen. We can certainly try, Catherine said. Your papa mentioned that there's an old apple tree behind the barn. We could pick apples this afternoon. Can Papa help us? Lucy asked hopefully. He's really good at climbing trees. Over the past few weeks, Lucy had been working hard to include Daniel in their activities. She would save special cookies for him, insist that he taste everything they cooked, and beg him to join them for evening activities like reading or working on puzzles. Daniel had been slowly responding to these invitations. He still worked long hours on the ranch, but he made more effort to be present during meals and to spend time with Lucy before bedtime. Catherine could see him watching them sometimes with an expression of wonder, as if he couldn't quite believe that his quiet house had become filled with laughter and conversation. That afternoon, the three of them walked out to the old apple tree together. It was gnarled and weathered but still producing fruit, and the apples that hung high in the branches were perfectly red and sweet. Daniel climbed up into the tree while Catherine and Lucy held baskets below, catching the apples. He tossed down. Lucy squealed with delight each time an apple landed in her basket, and she kept a running count of how many they had collected. 37, 38, 39, she called out. Miss Catherine, do you think that's enough for apple butter? More than enough, Catherine laughed. We'll have apple butter and apple pie and probably applesauce too. Papa, are you going to help us cook? Lucy called up to Daniel. I don't know much about cooking, Daniel called back down. That's ladies' work. That's what Mr. Johnson at the general store said, Lucy replied. But Miss Catherine says cooking is for anyone who wants to eat good food. And you like to eat good food, don't you, Papa? Daniel chuckled, and Catherine realized it was the first time she had heard him really laugh since her arrival. I do like good food, he admitted. Maybe I could help a little bit. Back in the kitchen, they worked together to prepare the apples. Daniel proved to be surprisingly good at peeling them, his strong hands making quick work of removing the skins in long, unbroken spirals. Lucy tried to copy his technique but ended up with uneven pieces and lots of giggles. Like this, sweetheart, Catherine showed her, guiding Lucy's small hands with the paring knife. Slow and steady. As they worked, Lucy chattered about everything and nothing. She told them about the new boy at school who could write his name backwards, about the book she was reading about a girl who lived in a lighthouse, and about her plans to teach Hope the colt to do tricks. Miss Rose says her papa is taking her to the harvest dance next week, Lucy mentioned casually. She gets to stay up late and wear her mama's old dress that's been made smaller. Catherine and Daniel exchanged glances. They had both forgotten about the annual harvest dance, a community celebration that marked the end of the farming season. Would you like to go to the dance? Catherine asked Lucy. Could we all go together? Lucy asked hopefully, like a real family. There was that phrase again? Lucy had been using it more and more lately, testing the idea of the three of them becoming something permanent and official. I suppose we could, Daniel said slowly. If Catherine would like to go, I think it would be wonderful, Catherine said. But I'll need to make Lucy a new dress. And I should probably make myself something suitable too. Miss Catherine, could you make me a dress like yours? Lucy asked, bouncing with excitement. With a twirly skirt that spins when you dance? Of course, we'll go to town tomorrow and pick out fabric. The next day, Catherine and Lucy took the wagon into Willowbrook to visit the general store. It was Catherine's first real outing since arriving in Montana, and she was curious to see more of the small town that was now her home. The general store was the heart of the community, a large building filled with everything from farming supplies to bolts of fabric to penny candy. Mr. Johnson, the store owner, was a friendly man with a gray beard who seemed to know everyone in town. Well, well, he said when Catherine and Lucy entered. You must be Miss Wells, Daniel's intended. Welcome to Willowbrook. Thank you, Catherine said, suddenly aware that everyone in town probably knew about their arrangement. It's nice to meet you. And how are you, Miss Lucy? Mr. Johnson asked. I hear you've been much happier lately. Lucy beamed with pride. Miss Catherine is teaching me to cook and braid my hair and lots of other things, and Papa is teaching me about horses. And we're all going to the harvest dance together. That's wonderful to hear, Mr. Johnson said warmly. Your mama would be so pleased to see you smiling again. As they looked at fabric for their dresses, several other women came into the store and introduced themselves to Catherine. They were friendly and welcoming, sharing bits of local news and asking about her adjustment to ranch life. "Daniel Parker is a good man," said Mrs. Mitchell, an older woman with kind eyes. "He had a hard time after Anne passed, but it looks like you're exactly what that family needed." Catherine felt a warm glow at these words. She was beginning to understand that her relationship with Daniel and Lucy wasn't just about the three of them. The whole community had been worried about this grieving family, and they were pleased to see signs of healing. Lucy chose a soft blue fabric that matched her eyes, and Catherine selected a deep green wool that would be practical for the approaching winter. They also bought ribbon and lace trim, and Mr. Johnson threw in some peppermint sticks for Lucy as a welcome gift. Back at the ranch, they spent the next few evenings working on their dresses by lamplight. Catherine taught Lucy basic sewing stitches, and Lucy proved to have a natural talent for the precise, careful work. "My stitches are getting straighter," Lucy observed, holding up her work to examine it in the light. "They certainly are," Catherine agreed. "You're a quick learner." "Mama used to sew," Lucy said. "She made all my dresses when I was little. Papa burned most of her things after she died, but he saved one of her dresses for me to have when I grow up." Catherine felt a pang of sadness for all the lost memories and keepsakes. "That was very thoughtful of him to save something special for you. He keeps it in the cedar chest in his room," Lucy continued. "Sometimes I ask him if I can look at it, and he lets me touch the fabric. It's really pretty, with tiny flowers embroidered on the collar." "Maybe someday you'll wear it to a special occasion," Catherine suggested. "Maybe to my own wedding," Lucy sighed dreamily. "When I'm grown up and find someone who loves me like Papa loved Mama." The night of the harvest dance arrived with a crisp, clear evening perfect for celebration. Lucy could barely contain her excitement as Catherine helped her into her new blue dress and braided her hair with ribbon woven through it. "Do I look like a real lady?" Lucy asked, twirling in front of the mirror. "You look absolutely beautiful," Catherine assured her. "Like a princess?" Catherine had worried about her own appearance, wanting to look nice for Daniel but not wanting to seem like she was trying too hard. She had chosen to wear her green dress with her grandmother's cameo pin, and she had arranged her hair in a simple but elegant style. When they came downstairs, Daniel was waiting in the main room wearing his best suit and looking handsome but nervous. He stared at both of them for a long moment, and Catherine saw something shift in his expression. "You both look lovely," he said quietly, "really lovely." The community hall was decorated with cornstalks, pumpkins, and colorful autumn leaves. Lanterns hung from the rafters, casting a warm glow over the dancing couples and families gathered for the celebration. A small group of musicians played fiddle music in one corner, and tables along the walls were loaded with food contributed by everyone in attendance. Lucy was immediately swept up by her school friends, all of them admiring each other's dresses, and planning which dances they would watch and which games they would play. Catherine watched her with a smile, seeing how confident and happy she looked surrounded by other children. "She's like a different child," Daniel said, following Catherine's gaze. "I had forgotten how outgoing she used to be. She just needed to feel safe to be herself again." Catherine replied. They were approached by several of Daniel's neighbors, men who wanted to congratulate him on his upcoming marriage and welcome Catherine to the community. Catherine was touched by how readily these people accepted her as one of them. The wedding was set for Sunday, just 5 days away, when everything changed. It started on Tuesday morning when Lucy complained that her throat felt scratchy and she didn't want to eat breakfast. Catherine felt the child's forehead and found it warmed to the touch. "You have a little fever, sweetheart," Catherine said, trying to keep the worry out of her voice. "I think you should stay home from school today and rest." Lucy, who normally would have protested missing school, simply nodded and climbed back into bed. That alone told Catherine that the child was genuinely unwell. By afternoon, Lucy's fever had climbed higher, and she had developed a harsh cough that made Catherine's stomach clench with fear. When Daniel came in for lunch, he took one look at Lucy's flushed face and bright, glassy eyes, and immediately sent for Doc Martinez from town. Dr. Martinez was an elderly man with gentle hands and a reassuring manner, but his expression grew serious as he examined Lucy. He listened to her chest with his stethoscope, looked at her throat, and felt the glands in her neck. "It's scarlet fever," he said quietly, pulling Catherine and Daniel aside. "I'm certain of it. She has all the classic symptoms, the fever, the sore throat, and look here." He showed them tiny red spots that had appeared on Lucy's chest and arms. Catherine felt the blood drain from her face. Scarlet fever was dangerous, especially for children. She had seen it sweep through neighborhoods in Boston, taking children away from their families with terrifying speed. "What do we do?" Daniel asked, his voice tight with fear. "Keep her comfortable, give her plenty of fluids, and watch her carefully," Dr. Martinez said. "The fever needs to break on its own. Sometimes it happens quickly, sometimes it takes longer. The important thing is to keep her cool and make sure she keeps drinking water. Will she?" Daniel couldn't finish the question, but Catherine could see the terror in his eyes. He had already lost his wife. The thought of losing Lucy too was more than he could bear. "She's a strong child," Dr. Martinez said kindly. "But I won't lie to you, this is serious. The next few days will tell us everything." After the doctor left, Catherine immediately went upstairs to Lucy's room and began preparing for what she knew would be a long battle. She opened the windows to let in fresh air, changed the bed linens to the coolest sheets she could find, and brought up clean washcloths and a basin of cool water for bathing Lucy's fever. "Miss Catherine?" Lucy's voice was hoarse and weak. "Am I very sick?" "You're sick, but I'm going to take very good care of you," Catherine said, sitting on the edge of the bed and smoothing Lucy's damp hair back from her forehead. "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart, I promise." "Are we still going to have the wedding on Sunday?" Catherine's heart broke at the hopeful note in Lucy's weak voice. "We'll have the wedding when you're all better. That's more important than any date on a calendar." "But I wanted to wear my new dress and see you marry Papa." "And you will, just as soon as you're well? Now try to rest." As the hours passed, Lucy's condition worsened. Her fever climbed higher, and she became restless and uncomfortable, tossing in her bed and calling out for her mother in her delirium. Catherine never left her side, constantly bathing her hot skin with cool cloths and coaxing her to sip water and broth. Then Daniel hovered in the doorway, clearly wanting to help but afraid he would be in the way. Catherine could see the memories haunting him, memories of watching his wife grow sicker and sicker until there was nothing anyone could do. "You should get some rest," Catherine told him on Tuesday night. "I'll stay with her." "I can't sleep," Daniel said. "Not when she's like this." "Then bring a chair and sit with us. But you need to stay strong for her." That night was the longest of Catherine's life. Lucy's fever spiked so high that she didn't recognize where she was, crying for her mother and pushing away Catherine's attempts to comfort her. Catherine bathed her burning skin over and over, changed her sweat-soaked nightgown repeatedly, and held her when the chills came. "Please don't leave me," Lucy whispered during one of her lucid moments, gripping Catherine's hand with surprising strength. "I'm not going anywhere," Catherine promised. "I'm right here, and I'm going to stay right here until you're better." By Wednesday morning, Catherine was exhausted but determined. She had not slept more than a few minutes at a time, and her own clothes were damp from constantly tending to Lucy's fever. Daniel brought her coffee and tried to convince her to rest, but she refused to leave Lucy's bedside. "You're going to make yourself sick," he warned. "I'm fine," Catherine insisted, though. She could feel fatigue making her movements clumsy and her thoughts slow. "Catherine, you can't keep this up. Let me take a turn watching her." "No," the word came out sharper than Catherine intended. "I mean, thank you, but I can't rest right now. She needs me." Daniel studied her face carefully. "You're afraid I'll leave, aren't you? If this gets too hard, if Lucy doesn't make it, you think I'll send you away?" Catherine felt tears sting her eyes. She hadn't realized how transparent her fears were, but Daniel was right. Deep down, she was terrified that if she couldn't save Lucy, Daniel would blame her. That he would decide he didn't need a wife who couldn't protect his daughter. I came here to take care of your family, Catherine said quietly. If I can't do that, Catherine, look at me. Daniel's voice was gentle but firm. You are not responsible for Lucy getting sick. And you staying awake for days isn't going to make her better any faster. All you're doing is wearing yourself out when we need you strong. I can't lose her, Catherine whispered. And she realized that her fears weren't really about Daniel sending her away. They were about losing this child who had become so precious to her. I love her so much, Daniel. I can't bear the thought of anything happening to her. I know, I love her too. But she needs both of us to be thinking clearly and taking care of ourselves so we can take care of her. Reluctantly, Catherine agreed to let Daniel sit with Lucy for a few hours while she rested. But even lying down in her own bed, she couldn't really sleep. Every sound from Lucy's room made her sit up and listen, ready to rush back if she was needed. Thursday brought a slight improvement. Lucy's fever was still high, but she was more aware of her surroundings and able to keep down small sips of broth. Catherine felt a tiny spark of hope, but she was afraid to believe it would last. How do you feel, sweetheart? Catherine asked, helping Lucy sit up to drink some water. Tired, Lucy whispered, and my throat hurts. But not as bad as yesterday. That's good, that's very good. Friday morning. Catherine woke up in the chair beside Lucy's bed to find the child's eyes clear and bright for the first time in days. Lucy's skin was cool to the touch, and though she was still weak, she was definitely better. Miss Catherine? Lucy's voice was still hoarse but much stronger. I'm hungry. Catherine felt tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. Oh, thank goodness. What would you like to eat? Could you make me some of that soup with the tiny noodles? The kind you made when I had a cold before? Of course, sweetheart, anything you want. Dr. Martinez came by that afternoon and confirmed what Catherine already knew Lucy was going to be fine. The fever had broken, the worst was over, and now she just needed rest and good food to regain her strength. You did an excellent job nursing her, Dr. Martinez told Catherine. I've seen many cases of scarlet fever, and the children who recover best are the ones who have someone devoted taking care of them. Lucy is very lucky to have you. That evening, as Lucy slept peacefully for the first time in days, Catherine finally allowed herself to relax. She sat on the front porch with Daniel, watching the sun set over the prairie and feeling like she had lived through a lifetime in the past few days. Thank you, Daniel said quietly, for everything you did for her. I know you barely slept, barely ate. You could have gotten sick yourself. I couldn't do anything else, Catherine replied. She's my daughter now in every way that matters. I would do anything to protect her. Daniel reached over and took her hand, the first time he had ever touched her so deliberately. When I saw how devoted you were to Lucy, how you refused to leave her side even when you were exhausted, I realized something. What's that? I realized that you're not here temporarily. You're not just someone who answered an advertisement. You're part of our family now, permanently and completely. Even if something had happened to Lucy, even if the worst had occurred, I would never want you to leave. You belong with us. Catherine felt more tears threaten, but these were tears of relief and happiness. I was so afraid you would blame me if I couldn't save her. Blame you, Catherine, you probably saved her life. Your care, your dedication, your love, that's what brought her through this. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both exhausted, but grateful beyond words. Lucy was going to be fine. Their little family was going to survive this test, and somehow they had come through it stronger than before. So, Daniel said eventually, when would you like to have that wedding? I think Lucy is going to be very disappointed if we wait much longer. Catherine smiled, feeling lighter than she had in days. How about next Sunday? I think we've waited long enough. Next Sunday it is? Inside the house, Lucy called out weakly for Catherine, and both adults immediately stood up to go to her. As they walked up the stairs together, Catherine realized that something fundamental had changed during these difficult days. The wedding took place on a crisp November Sunday in the small white church that served the Willowbrook community. Lucy, still pale but determined not to miss the ceremony, wore her blue dress from the harvest dance and carried a small bouquet of the last autumn wildflowers. Catherine chose a simple cream-colored dress she had sewn herself, and Daniel wore his best dark suit with a white shirt that Catherine had pressed until it was perfect. Reverend Morrison performed the ceremony in front of the entire community, and Catherine felt overwhelmed by the warmth and acceptance she saw in the faces around her. These people, who had been strangers just 3 months ago, now felt like family. "Do you, Daniel Parker, take Catherine Wells to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Daniel said, looking into Catherine's eyes with an expression of certainty that made her heart skip. "Do you, Catherine Wells, take Daniel Parker to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Catherine replied, thinking of all they had already weathered together in such a short time. When Daniel kissed her to seal their union, Catherine heard Lucy clap her hands with delight, and she couldn't help but smile against her new husband's lips. The small reception in the church basement was filled with simple food, fiddle music, and genuine celebration. Lucy stayed close to Catherine's side, proudly introducing her to anyone who would listen as "my new mama." Each time the child said it, Catherine felt a warm glow of belonging. "Mrs. Parker," said Mrs. Henderson from the school, "I want you to know how wonderful it's been to see Lucy bloom this fall. She's like a completely different child, bright, talkative, eager to participate in everything." "She's always been wonderful," Catherine replied. "She just needed to feel safe to show it." "Well, whatever you're doing, keep it up. It's clear that little girl adores you." As the afternoon wound down, Daniel helped Catherine and Lucy into their wagon for the ride home. Lucy chattered excitedly about the ceremony, the cake, and all the compliments people had given her on how grown-up she looked. "Are we going to have a wedding supper?" Lucy asked. "Mrs. Johnson said married people always have a special dinner on their wedding day." "I thought we could all cook together," Catherine suggested. "Make something special to celebrate. Can we make chicken and dumplings?" That was Mama's favorite for special occasions. Catherine and Daniel exchanged glances. This was the first time Lucy had suggested they prepare something that had been special to her birth mother, and Catherine wasn't sure how to respond. "If that's what you'd like," Catherine said carefully, "I'd be honored to learn how your mama made them." "Papa knows the recipe," Lucy said confidently. "Mama taught him so he could make them when she was too tired from being sick." That evening, the three of them worked together in the kitchen to prepare their wedding feast. Daniel proved to know exactly how Anne had made her dumplings light and fluffy and perfectly seasoned. As he guided Catherine through the process, Lucy added her own memories. "Mama always said the secret was not to stir them too much," Lucy instructed seriously, "and she would hum while she rolled them out. She said happy songs made better dumplings." So Catherine hummed as she worked, and Lucy giggled at her attempts to remember the tune to "Oh, Susanna." Daniel watched them both with an expression of wonder, as if he couldn't quite believe the scene was real. "This feels right," he said quietly as they waited for the dumplings to cook. "And would be happy to see Lucy laughing in this kitchen again." "Do you really think so?" Lucy asked suddenly. "Serious." "I know so," Daniel assured her. "Your mama loved you more than anything in the world. All she ever wanted was for you to be happy and safe and loved." "And now I am," Lucy said with satisfaction. "I have Papa and Miss Catherine. Mama." "Catherine, can I call you Mama Catherine now?" Catherine felt tears prick her eyes. "I would be honored if you did." Their wedding dinner was perfect, simple food prepared with love and eaten by a family that had found their way to each other through loss and hope. As they sat around the kitchen table, Catherine realized that this was what happiness felt like. Not grand gestures or dramatic moments, but quiet contentment shared with the people you love most. Winter settled over the ranch in earnest after their wedding, bringing long nights and snow that transformed the prairie into a white wonderland. Catherine had worried that the isolation might feel oppressive, but instead she found these months to be precious time for their new Family to grow closer, they developed evening routines that felt. Spring arrived at the Parker Ranch like a gentle promise kept. The snow melted away to reveal green grass pushing up through the dark earth, and the cottonwood trees along the creek burst into tiny green leaves that danced in the warm breeze. Catherine stood on the front porch, watching Lucy run through the yard chasing butterflies and laughing with pure joy that it had been 8 months since Catherine first stepped off the train in Willowbrook, and she could hardly believe how much their lives had changed. The quiet, sad house had become filled with laughter and conversation. The lonely man and grieving child had become her beloved husband and daughter. Most amazingly, she had become someone she never thought she could be: a wife, a mother, and the heart of a real family. "Look, Mama Catherine," Lucy called out, using the name that had become natural over the winter months. "The apple tree has blossoms. Does that mean we'll have apples for pie this fall?" "It certainly does," Catherine called back, smiling at Lucy's excitement over something as simple as tree blossoms. The child had regained all her natural curiosity and enthusiasm, plus a wisdom and empathy that came from having lived through real loss and found happiness again. Daniel emerged from the barn, leading Hope, the young horse that had become Lucy's special project. The colt had grown considerably over the winter and was now a beautiful chestnut color with a white star on his forehead. Lucy had been working with Daniel to train him, and the horse followed her around like a devoted dog. "Are we ready for our ride?" Daniel asked, bringing Hope over to where Lucy was waiting with barely contained excitement. "Oh yes," Lucy bounced on her toes. "Mama Catherine, are you sure you don't want to come with us?" Catherine laughed. "I think I'll enjoy watching you two from here. Besides, someone needs to start dinner." The truth was, Catherine loved these moments when she could simply observe her family being happy together. Daniel had become much more comfortable showing affection and spending time with Lucy, and their afternoon rides had become a special tradition that belonged just to them. As Catherine watched Daniel lift Lucy onto Hope's back and then swing up behind her, she thought about how natural they looked together. Daniel was patient and encouraging, never pushing Lucy beyond what she was comfortable with, always making sure she felt safe. Lucy trusted him completely, leaning back against his chest as they rode slowly around the corral. "Look how straight." "I'm sitting," Lucy called out proudly. "Daniel says I have natural balance, just like Mama did." Catherine felt her heart swell with happiness. Over the winter, Daniel had become much more comfortable talking about Anne with Lucy, sharing happy memories instead of hiding from them. It had helped Lucy process her grief in a healthy way, and it had helped Catherine understand her place in their family story, not as a replacement, but as a new chapter. After their ride, Daniel and Lucy came inside to find Catherine preparing Lucy's favorite meal: fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and fresh green beans from the garden they had planted together. The kitchen smelled wonderful, and the table was set with the good china and a jar of wildflowers from the prairie. "What's the special occasion?" Daniel asked, washing his hands at the kitchen pump. "Do we need a special occasion to celebrate being together?" Catherine replied, standing on her toes to kiss his cheek. Daniel smiled and wrapped his arms around her waist. "I suppose not. Though I have to say, every day feels like a celebration lately." During dinner, Lucy chattered about everything she had learned during their ride, about the book she was reading, and about her plans for the summer. She wanted to teach Hope to jump over small logs, help Catherine expand the vegetable garden, and maybe even learn to milk the cows. "Mrs. Henderson says I'm reading at a level much higher than other children my age," Lucy announced proudly. "She thinks I might be ready to help teach the younger children next year." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Catherine said. "Your mama would be so proud of how smart you are." "I think she would be proud of all of us," Lucy said thoughtfully. "Papa isn't sad all the time anymore, and you're not lonely like you were in Boston, and I'm not afraid of being happy because I know it won't disappear." Catherine and Daniel exchanged glances over Lucy's head. Sometimes the child's observations were so insightful that they took their breath away. "What do you mean, honey?" Catherine asked gently. "Well, after Mama died, I was afraid that if I loved someone too much, they might go away too. But now I understand that love doesn't make people leave. Love makes families stronger, even when sad things happen. That evening, after Lucy had gone to bed, Catherine and Daniel sat on the front porch swing that he had built for her as a wedding present. The spring air was warm and sweet with the scent of prairie flowers, and the sky was full of stars that seemed close enough to touch. Do you ever think about that first day when you arrived? Daniel asked, pulling Catherine closer to his side. Every day, Catherine admitted, I was so nervous and scared. I had no idea what I was getting into. I was terrified, Daniel confessed. I thought I was just hiring someone to help with the house and Lucy. I never expected to fall in love. When did you know? Catherine asked curiously. When did you realize it was more than just a practical arrangement? Daniel was quiet for a moment, thinking. I think it was the day Lucy got sick with scarlet fever. Watching you refuse to leave her side, seeing how much you loved her already, it made me realize that you weren't just living in our house. You had made it your home, and you had made us your family. And when did you know you loved me? The night of the harvest dance, when we danced together for the first time. I looked at you in that green dress, saw how happy Lucy was, saw how you had brought joy back into our lives, and I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with you. Catherine snuggled closer to her husband, feeling grateful beyond words for the path that had led her to this porch, this man, this life. I love you, Daniel Parker. I love you too, Catherine Parker. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the prairie at night, the soft lowing of cattle in the distance, the whisper of wind through the grass, the gentle creak of the porch swing. Do you think we'll have more children? Catherine asked softly. Would you like that? I think Lucy would love to be a big sister. And I'd love to give you more children to carry on the Parker name. Daniel kissed the top of her head. I'd like that too. Lucy's going to be a wonderful big sister. The next morning, Catherine woke up before dawn as she always did, but this time she felt different. She couldn't quite put her finger on what it was, but something had shifted during the night. As she prepared breakfast and watched the sunrise paint the sky pink and gold, she felt a deep sense of contentment and completion. When Lucy came downstairs rubbing sleep from her eyes, she noticed immediately that something was different about. Catherine, you look extra happy today, Mama Catherine, Lucy observed as she climbed onto her chair at the kitchen table. I am extra happy, Catherine agreed, setting a plate of fresh biscuits and honey in front of the child. I'm happy because I realized something important last night. What's that? I realized that this is exactly where I belong. Here with you and your papa, in this house, on this land. For the first time in my whole life, I'm completely and perfectly home. Lucy smiled and reached over to squeeze Catherine's hand. I'm glad you came to us, she said simply. Even though it was sad when Mama died, I think maybe she knew we would need you. Do you really think so? I do. Sometimes when I'm really happy, I feel like she's smiling too. Like she's glad we found each other. Daniel came in from his morning chores to find his wife and daughter holding hands across the kitchen table, both of them glowing with happiness. He stopped in the doorway for a moment, just taking in the scene, memorizing every detail. Good morning, my girls, he said, settling into his own chair and reaching for their hands to complete the circle. Good morning, Papa, Lucy said cheerfully. Mama Catherine says she's completely and perfectly home now. Is that so? Daniel asked, looking at Catherine with eyes full of love. It is, Catherine confirmed. I was thinking that maybe this afternoon we could ride out to that hill overlooking the valley, the one where you can see for miles in every direction. I'd like to see all of our land from up there. Our land, Daniel repeated, liking the sound of it. As they sat around the breakfast table, making plans for their day and their future, Catherine thought about how far they had all come. Daniel had learned to love again without feeling guilty. Lucy had learned that you could lose someone important and still find happiness again. And Catherine had learned that sometimes the best things in life come when you're brave enough to take a chance on something unknown. Outside the kitchen window, Hope the horse galloped across the pasture, his coat gleaming in the morning sun. The apple tree was covered in white blossoms that would become fruit by autumn. The garden was planted and growing, promising fresh vegetables for their table. Everything about this place spoke of continuity, of seasons that would come and go, of a family that would face whatever challenges arose together. Catherine had come to Montana looking for security and found something much more valuable. She had found love, purpose, and the unshakable knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be.